Okay, so on this one, pretty much any time you see parentheses like this with an exponent, that's probably the side to start with because there's stuff to do there, right? So we're looking at sine theta minus cosine theta all squared. So what I would recommend starting with here is expand that, FOIL it out, right? So that's your first term, sine squared theta, minus sine times cosine doubled, so 2 sine theta cosine theta, the last term squared, so cosine squared theta. And that's just foiling or multiplying, whatever you want to call it, but just expand it, right? The same way you would x minus y all squared. So from there, what can you do? Well, again, look for identities and really think about where you're headed and how that kind of plays into it. So I would notice you have a sine squared theta plus a cosine squared theta. That's an identity, right? Sine squared and cosine squared give us 1. That's a Pythagorean identity, right? Okay, so now that you have that, how can we get from here up to this sine 2 theta? Well, it's exactly the identity, right? This right here is a double angle identity. So you end up with 1 minus sine 2 theta. Now, I just want to point out the wrong thing to do would, especially if you're not following this format, because again, I do want to see this format where there's some sort of reasoning of why you made your choices. But the wrong approach that I do see somewhat often is you have our second to last step. So you've got 1 minus 2 sine theta cosine theta. And sometimes we write this where you kind of copy and paste the other side, right, where we're heading. And instead of simplifying this as we did, I see a lot of people transform the other side. And that's not really what you're asked to do, right? So they kind of show that these two middle steps are equal to each other. And that's just not, it's not the request, right? Request when we're saying verify is only transform one side at a time and get that one side to equal the other side, where the other one, the secondary side, which in our case was the right-hand side, right, is completely unaffected. So if your goal is to transform, then you need to go that last step and write 1 minus sine of 2 theta and show me that was equal to not an adjustment of that original, but equal to the original. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to ask questions if it doesn't.